Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the r/civ Battle Royale. This week I had a lot of shit to do, which is why this installment is late. It was written by both Hercantula and Nightman in an alternating fashion, so it might get a little schizophrenic. I also might edit a lot because time. I will also be at TPang's Farewell Civ 5 stream later today, which isn't even relevant because that'll probably over when this installment drops, so you know, yay for pointless announcements. We move on to the power ranking slide, where the Boers sit comfortably at the top. The Boer invasion of Finnish Italy has unfortunately come to a halt recently, as they can't seem to realize that their hover tanks can't capture cities. However, if they can keep the cities down low and sneak a melee boat in there, they'd have yet another foothold to launch an attack on mainland Europe. Here we have a beautiful map of the cylinder, courtesy of Nathan Massey. It not only highlights the changes that happened last part, but it finally gives a clear insight to the borders at sea. Hotspots are the Mediterranean and the Caribbean, where you can see that border gore is definitely not only a thing on land. The Australians keep getting a better foothold on the Americans, and have a lot of room to try and get a land force in on the coast. This is also a good time to point out that Vietnam nearly encapsulates the mainland of Sri Lanka, while cutting off Negombo completely. The game begins as the Babylonian sub moves its all-seeing eyes to the Arabian Peninsula, and the also stagnating invasion of Finnish Arabia. The Boers seem to have the same problem on both fronts, as they swarm the cities with units that can't capture them. But we would like to take the time for a big event aboard the sub. We've gained enough experience for an upgrade. I just hope we get bigger bathtubs to relax in. Also, I heard Overlord TPang invites us all for a drink and he's paying. So come on over and rejoice. Things have died down around Iberia. The Boers seem to be in control of most of the peninsula for now, although you cannot be sure when a Finnish XCOM squad drops down, while Iceland only has to fear the group of carriers holding 2 units and a cyber sub. Further east, Boer forces might make a move to capture the cities in black, with the mobile SAM on its way to Panormus. Here's a strategic view of Iberia and Italy, so we can see the devastation left by the Boer advance. Braga has had all of its land tiles in the general vicinity pillaged, leaving the only place safe of fire the pristine Mediterranean waters, although at this point they're probably absolutely packed with Boer hover tanks, desperately wondering how the Finnish cities are holding on. I think Paul Kruger may have run into a design flaw here. At the Siberian Vietnam front, we can see that Kuchum Khan is fighting valiantly against the Trung sisters. Every damaged city except Herat has more health since we last saw them fighting, and a lot more Siberian units are closing in on the borders. Meanwhile, Vietnam's units are nowhere close to capturing Herat. The Roman ballista has moved around the city to get a spectacular view of the combat. The not-quite city-state of Armenia declares they will find that pesky Ashanti pikeman and cut off his head. How they're going to make it to the Indian Ocean with no cities on that coast and Vietnam definitely not giving them open borders anytime soon, I'm not sure, but Tiridates can hope. Really, that's the only thing he can do at this point, given the state of his empire. As we've come to expect, the army of workers stationed inside the Siberian cities keep doing their thing, clearing all the nuclear fallout around Nareem. Siberian forces have finally pushed into the Vietnamese territory near Bamda, but a lot of soldiers have been lost doing so. We cannot assess the situation more precisely since the repeal of historical landmarks is blocking our view. The destroyed city of Tikal still remains unclaimed land, and the closest settler to it I can see is a Buccaneer one next to St. Eustatius. Is it possible that the Buccaneers will be sneaky and settle a city on the ruins? Granted, it won't have the population of Tikal, but it would be one massive screw you to the Australian invasion. The paratrooper near Uxmal could also be useful if either of the Buccaneer settlers, as there's one near Chichen Itza as well, decide to settle the ruins of Tikal. The end of Mexico seems close. Both Ciudad Juarez and Veracruz are in deep red, and surrounded by at least one unit to capture them, with Mexico City in the yellow. Benito has no melee units left, and the Mexican writer documents the downfall of his country while weeping. It might be time to prime the F-keys, ladies and gentlemen. A Boer and Australian cyber sub meet outside the Kimberley city of Wollongara, both hopefully packing nuclear weapons. This is unfortunate news for Paul Kruger. The cyber sub that Henry Parks is sending over seems to be close to firing range on Middelburg, which ironically is not in the middle of anything, and only has to fight through a few units to get there. Carpeting continues on the Inuit island of Mililani Moka, and the results speak for themselves. The carrier virus has not spread to this tranquil place on the cylinder. Meanwhile, Kamehameha looks upon the Inuit army in sighs, wishing he could have his empire back. The Inuit still seem to have a eunuch, most likely to serve as a friendly anti-drug mascot for the local island children. Yakutia holds on for dear life, thankful that Korea can't get a melee unit into Beriozovo. I feel genuinely sorry for Yakutia, sitting pretty for a millennium until Korea decided it was time to go, and in one fell swoop took all of their cities. It would be a cruel existence if they decided to peace out now. Iceland is on a mission to wipe the Bucks off the map once and for all, with their giant armada of, I count 7 ships here? Granted, there are also 2 nuclear missiles to possibly do some damage, but I would say it won't be enough without some support coming very soon. That being said, they'd only have to face carriers. Holy God, this is not something I expected to see in this part. I thought they'd at least hold on for a little longer, but it seems that the Blackfoot managed to push through the rut they'd gotten themselves into with the Mexican War. That means that Mexico has been eliminated in 22nd place, and what a ride they've had. In the early game I saw Mexico as a regional power, joining in on the great North American gangbang, but stagnating there on out. The sack of Austin is a moment that will be remembered by all, as will the sheer determination of the Mexican people in not succumbing to the Blackfoot invasion. The assault of the One-Tile Islands has begun. Iceland's forces are drifting along the sea borders of the Buccaneer holdings, while Portobello has been reduced to less than half health. That said, all 3 islands have a lot of units stationed on them, with a total of 38 units split between the 5 cities we can see. We can also spot an Icelandic settler going west. Let's all hope he dodges death going through the Buccaneer territory and settles on the spot Tikal used to be. Dream big, little man. Dream big. The Siberian Vietnam front seems to be coming to a halt. The previously damaged cities of Urgench and Nishapur are now at full health and looking fine for the moment. The same cannot be said for the Sibir city of Herat, which seems worse off than last time we saw it. The biotrooper TPang has highlighted can hopefully help the defense. The Buccaneer settlers making great strides toward the ruins of Tikal, now in the Australian borders of Port-au-Prince. The Bucks actually have good control of the Nassau Canal, making sure no Wobbegong armada can pass through, thereby saving Leogan for now. Chichen Itza is also healing up nicely, and the Bucks seem to be regaining control of the situation, albeit slowly. Mongolian mobile SAMs spill out into Sri Lankan Arabia, and more funny than that is the poor Boer hover tank stuck in the middle of Vietnamese territory. I bet he just wishes he could butt his head against Finnish Arabia, not ever taking a city. Reinforcements have arrived, and it seems Ingolfur has given the order to take Cienfuegos. Led by the heroic Icelandic scout, the Armada makes its way to the Strait of Gibraltar, one of the few spots on the cylinder where such a huge naval force doesn't mean that much with a limited space. However, with more reinforcements coming, Iceland can brute force its way through the Buck defenses. The Cybersub seems to have different plans, and looks to head west, unleashing hell on the main Buck holdings. The Australian Cybersub makes its way up and around towards Middelburg, thoroughly confusing the Boer Navy as they head toward where the Cybersub previously was. This tactic could work wonders for Parks. Distract the Navy that could destroy your nuclear warhead while it makes its way to nuke the crap out of another city. A look at the Finnish core, almost devoid of any land units. The few they do have are on border patrol, to watch their Swedish neighbours. The one thing Finland has going for them in this slide is their half-decent navy, which means Sweden can't immediately take their coastal cities in the north. Here's a unit I don't think we've seen in a long time, an Australian Prime Minister. From his Wikipedia page I gather that this one was the 23rd Prime Minister of Australia, and was quite different from his predecessor in the fact that he didn't introduce radical reforms in the beginning of his term, and instead worked slower. But hey, What do I know about Australian politics? I just read something off a Wikipedia page. The welcoming committee of the Boers, consisting of cyber subs, is greeting a part of the Wobbegong Armada near the Kimberley holdings of the Antarctic. We know one of the Australian ships carries a nuclear missile, but there are 3 more ships carrying a load of their own. Meanwhile, the Boers have a carrier with 2 units. The Kimberley just watched from their island, wishing they had any idea how to make units this advanced. I actually forgot that Armenia owned Gaza. Still not gonna make their dream of beheading the Ashanti pikemen any more real. Gaza is currently a puppet, meaning Armenia cannot control what it builds. It could be building literally anything for all we know, but I like to think that the government of Gaza has ordered a monument to be built, and Tiridates then proceeds to throw a hissy fit in his office, unable to stop them. 4 cities of the Bucks are more damaged than they were in the previous slide, with Leogan having no health left. Guadalajara is also at risk of being captured by the Australians, as an AA gun moves in for the capture. The Buck settler has opted for a tactical retreat. The Icelandic fleet from the west is also moving in closer and closer, possibly to capture a city or 2. A beautiful shot of the Finnish Empire, basking in irrelevance. However, this isn't the main focus of this slide. Armenia seems to be intent on taking out all destroyed civilizations on the cylinder, this time being intent on destroying the Timurids. A shot of southern Finland shows they've recently become a fan of war tactics, since their land army consists primarily of hover tanks now. Also, Armenia is seen in almost its full glory, sporting more land units than any other civilization on this screen. A strange day, even in La La Land. Second batch of units is sent over by Australia for the Boer invasion. We get a shot of a giant death robot riding an advanced destroyer, which is not quite as embarrassing as riding a caravel. It's actually pretty badass in my opinion. An arsenal ship has joined the fray in the Indian Ocean, bringing 2 more nuclear missiles into play. Neither side has used theirs yet, with Australia still rocking 4 of them. So far it seems that the Boers are losing this fight, losing more units. Will the arsenal ship make the difference? To the left of this screen we can see that the attack on Portobello still continues, but with only 2 units next to it, so it may fail or it may succeed. I'm actually surprised that Iceland hasn't started an attack on Cienfuegos yet, but the great general might just order his army to do that soon. Guadalajara is getting surrounded by more and more Australian units, and it only seems to be a matter of time before that area is greener than it is now. But more importantly, we have landfall. An Australian settler sits on the place next to where Tikal used to be, and I can't see Australia not settling here first. Too bad, Tibet. With the war between Mexico and the Blackfoot finally over, the Blackfoot can finally start to clear up all the fallout that arose because of it. I'd like to know how many nukes were actually dropped on Mexico during the war. It must be somewhere above 15. There's just so much fallout everywhere. Also, another thing I can't remember is if Australia and the Blackfoot are at war. If so, that paratrooper heading towards Ciudad Juarez could be a problem. Another slide of the Vietnamese-Siberian border showing just how little it's been achieved so far due to the difficult terrain around here. I wouldn't give this war to any side just yet, although 2 GDRs are moving towards Wuppertal in the top right corner. Time will tell if that's enough to break the Siberian defenses. And that atomic bomb could spell bad news for the Blackfoot as it heads toward the Americas. Although it's more likely that the bomb is on a path directly toward the Buccaneers, which is equally scary. A strategic view of the Caribbean. The main holdings of the Bucks are slowly getting destroyed, with Port Royale in the black and both St. Eustatius and Tortuga being the next targets. More importantly though, this is our first look at Therapne, the replacement of Tikal. A beautiful location, and looking at the number of units stationed there, it has a fantastic hangar as well. This gives the Aussies another base to damage the Buck holdings. We get a look at the Siberian north, littered with future world improvements. As always, the deity AI somehow makes the worst city spots, as in literally a snow-covered island, into massive population hubs. I mean, Krasnodar is bigger than some capitals in the game. That's pretty good. The Siberian core is definitely filling up with units as opposed to workers this time around. Nareem might have been hit by a missile here, being at half health and all. However, the Sibir, famed for their industrious engineers, get to work immediately to clean out the fallout. Trikadar Khan is silently rapping in his own corner of the world, waiting. Some progress on the Sibir-Vietnam front as Herat is captured by Vietnam. The Roman ballista flees the scene of the crime, having learned from its thousands of years of wandering the earth that violence is not the answer. The strategic view of the area reveals that Narim was indeed nuked, along with Dila and Rasht, judging from the fallout surrounding those cities. Workers are on their way. The Knights of the Mound Table are retreating, lest their horses mutate from all the radiation. A look at the newest edition of the Australians, an aerial base in Therapnei. Parks is finally getting a good foothold of the Americas, already trying to fill his territory with units. Guadalajara is still under siege, although sending more units to capture the city might be a good idea. The Australian arsenal ship is definitely in range of Middelburg, now with little to no resistance from the Boers. Even if Australia nukes Middelburg, takes the city and then pieces out afterwards, they'd still be in an advantageous position next time they go to war. Having a city right off the coast of Africa to attack from would be massive. Please Korea, end his misery. Darkhan's mixtape isn't even fire enough to save him from this icy hell. You had your chance in the beginning, but you blew it. The Icelandic core, like the previous narrator mentioned, is practically devoid of land units, and down near their capital is a worryingly large amount of carriers without planes on them. Carriers are great units, of course, but without anything on them, they're not the most efficient city attacking tool. The Brazilian core in all its glory, stretching South America almost entirely. Even though he has not been at war, it seems Pedro has not been sitting idle, sporting a nice carpet already. The Icelandic musician spreads his propagandic words across the continent, but the Brazilians are not swayed by his music, preferring more hip-shaking during their carnivals. The new city of Aotearoa is settled by the Boers, and a Boer worker is instantly sent there to clean up the pillaged tiles. Imagine having to head off from the paradise that is Pretoria just to scrub up debris from a slum city that's only recently come into being. You better get a good pay for this. The Sibir seem to have taken a beating during this turn, with a lot of cities in the yellow or red, but they have recaptured Herat. Fallout spreads everywhere, and even the Hunnic worker has been hired to help with clearing it. On the other side of the border, Sibir seems to have some space to send their army towards Bamda. Portobello falls to a small Icelandic force, and the attack on Cienfuegos begins, looking to be fairly successful, as it's in the red with a destroyer next to it. Also, Leiria and Kumana are both being attacked. Could this spell the end for the Bucks in Europe? The Boers make some gains and capture both Mecca and Bethlehem. Small group of hover tanks continue toward Jerusalem, and Finland doesn't look like it's gonna do anything to stop them. The attack on Buccaneer Europe/Africa continues, with not much progress being made since last turn. Back in Saleh, the Bucks have a stack of drone fighters that could be used to stop any attack by those Icelandic units. However, they could also be in range of Leiria, halting that attack drastically. Armenia never forgets and plans to end Leg Day once and for all. This might not even be a good idea, as we saw the carpet that Dwin built for itself a few slides ago. Compared to that, Armenia might be in for a surprise if Tiridates declares war. The saving grace of Armenia is that they have paratroopers, which might be crucial if Dvin can't reach them. Mongolia making peace with the Dvinese Empire means we can look at their core. Karakorum is at an abysmal 20 population. The Sibir cities in the icy north are better than that. Apart from this, their unit spread looks good, and declaring war on Sibir would probably result in them gaining a few cities. An Afghan paratrooper without a home accidentally crash lands in the waters outside Jakarta. Maybe he's taken the Roman ballista's view on war, or maybe it'll take him a few thousand years to figure that out. Either way, the Afghan paratroopers found solace in Jakarta. Leiria is the next buck holding to fall to Iceland, taking down 5 stationed units in the process. Kumana seems very likely to fall with it, while Cienfuegos might hold out for a little longer. Iceland is slowly driving the Bucks back to their holdings on the other side of the Atlantic. The Ashanti pikeman, floating in the middle of the Indian Ocean, decides he's just had enough of Sibir and, even though he's small, he can take on the might of Kuchum Khan. Also, that Burmese musician in the top left-hand corner seems to be spitting straight fire. Stretch those legs, boys and girls, it's time to get to work. Dvin has trained hard for this moment. With their solid carpet, powerful soldiers, and unexpected allies, the Spartans decide it's time to take back what is theirs. Finland may be a superpower, but Sparta is a nation of true warriors. This may not be a suicide declaration at all. As always, Sparta surprises us and immediately takes Jerusalem from Finnish hands. With an attack on Nicomedia getting the city down to yellow, this is definitely a fun time to be a Spartan supporter. An overview of our spies info. As always, it's the big guys bullying the ones without any cities. Really, the only intrigue which might be true is the possible Armenian Dwin war. And that's it for this part. I'd like to thank Hercantula and Nightman for their narration, and all of you for enjoying the goings-on. Make sure to go to r/Civ Battle Royale and check out the new novel, of which my good friend Dawkins is currently making an audio version. Burgerkrieg out.